especially now that the news of like the Great Resignation coming up, right?
That is something, yes.
Yeah.
So and I'm curious to see how you've seen that in your field.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got to get all the technical stuff out the way.
Yeah.
So for everybody who is watching YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. And for everybody else here on podcast, please welcome my guest, Sebaztian Pardo. Did I say that correctly?
You did, yes.
Is it spelled with a Z or an S?
It is spelled with a Z. My mom wanted to make it different, which she already did because my full first name is Sergio Sebastian, but she puts it all together. So it's already 18 letters long, and she just decided to throw a Z in there.
You know, that's like my license. It's Michael Douglas Juan Acosta. Yeah. So if you take away the Juan, it's like Michael Douglas, which relates to the actor. So I always ask my mother, so is there a reason why my name is Michael Douglas I should know about?
Yeah.
She denies it, but you know.
Yeah, hey, it's nice to like think about that. Like, wow.
Exactly. Now, so you just said your name is Spanish. Now, what nationality?
So my mom is Mexican. My dad is Peruvian. Yeah.
Peruvian.
Yeah.
Have you guys been there?
Yeah, so it was funny because so my dad lives there now. He retired here and then just went to go live because my older sisters, who are on my dad's side, and most of my dad's family lives in Peru. So I actually didn't get to go until I was 22, I think, was the first time that I ever went. I got to see one of my sisters, got to meet a bunch of my family, my grandma from my dad's side. And then before the pandemic, I was going just about like every year, every other year. And then work would sometimes take me down to Latin America, Brazil, or Argentina. And then I would just kind of like swoop back to Peru, say hi, and then come back.
That is such a cool place to be at, and it's so unique. And I've always wanted to go there because I want to see Machu Picchu.
Yeah, I have never done it.
Really?
Yes. My dad either. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm waiting for you." So it's, you know, that Latin guilt trip from parents. Yeah, it was just like, well, I haven't gone because you haven't come to do it with me. Like, oh my god.
You know, honestly, that's the same thing that I have with Alcatraz over here. It's literally down the street, and I've never been there.
Yeah.
Even when I grew up in Hayward, I'll go to Alcatraz one day, move to the city, it's right down the street, and then you just never do it. No. And then all the tourists come and say, "Oh, Alcatraz, what do you know about it?" I'm like, honestly, I've never been there. At all. I've been in a boat, we've gone around it, but I've never actually been on the island. So one of those things that's right there and you just don't do. But that is something that I want to go see is Machu Picchu, just to be... First of all, just how they built that thing. Yeah. And then I know we're still debating on how old is it and who really built it. How did you have this technology to put that stuff together? But I mean, just the pictures that you see of the landscape and, you know, the view, it's like, yeah, I would once in a lifetime experience.
Absolutely.
So make sure the next time that you go there, that's on your bucket list. Because for sure. I want to see, you know, I want to hear from people who have been there. Like, okay, tell me about when to go, where to stay at, what else is there to do in Peru. But honestly, you know, I want to go and see Machu Picchu.
Yeah, like that, Cusco, like all of that area.
Cusco, yes.
I'm dying to go. But my dad lives in Lima or Chiclayo, which is up like north. And then like Machu Picchu is like further south. So that's why we never, like it's never on the same.
Oh, gotcha. So it looks close on the map, but I'm guessing driving there, it's not like driving here to LA.
No, like Lima is already, I think, don't quote me on this, I think it's about like 12, 16 hours away from Cusco. And then Chiclayo is already 12 hours away from Lima driving. So you have to fly. So I think. I could be wrong. But
it's probably about as close as here to LA. I mean, mileage-wise, right?
Further, because it's 12 hours. I mean, to be fair, every time my dad, I don't know why he does this, but every time I go and he wants to go from Lima to Chiclayo, we take a bus, and it's awful. And I'm like, Dad, it's like a 2-hour flight. Can we please? It's like, oh, no, it's cheaper. I'm like, not by that much. But anyway, the bus takes about 12 hours. So probably by car, it'll be a little easier.
That would be something my dad would say. It's cheaper. You know, it's like when you packed everybody into the same car, like, oh, it's cheaper. Why take 2 cars?
Because
exactly. That I had seen from a lot of South American countries that when you try to go from point A to point B, it takes so long because there's no roads or the roads are just not in great condition. And then you're piled into a bus that goes 25 miles an hour. Yep. I'm not sure if it's Peru, but one of those countries has that really, what they call it, like a death highway, because you're on the mountain and you're in this really narrow road and it's one way and you're looking down, and if somebody comes the wrong way and you guys don't on the same page.
So where my dad grew up in Peru, it's like a little mountain village up north, so like even further north from Chiclayo, called Huambos. And in Huambos, to get there, before my dad had a car there that could go up because you need like a 4-wheel drive car, we would take a bus. And back when we would take the bus, so like the first time that I went, back in like I think 2011, I think was the first time I went, we We got on a bus to go up there with unpaved roads, all on this mountainside. And I don't know if you've ever driven like a Devil's Slide before they close it down here,
Yes.
Highway 1. Yeah. So it was like that, but one road with a bus that takes up the entire road. And when you look over, you just see the cliff of the mountain just going all the way down.
There's no railing. It's literally like if your thing is off by a few.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So my dad finally got a car, and so now we like take up his car when we go. It's like, oh, this is a lot better. Like we can actually fit on the road.
Yeah.
But when you see a bus coming, you're like, I don't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do. That's it. I'm over. It's
Everybody's just doing the whole thing. Like, okay, please let me make it through this one.
You need those speed racer buttons, like just.
Yeah. Like I tell, I can't wait to go to Peru. So I'm going to be talking later about the things I need to know as somebody who's never been there about that most tourists wouldn't even know about. So that's going to be exciting.
Absolutely.
But another exciting thing is what you do for a living.
Yeah.
So you work at Twitch.
I do.
Which is a company that everybody has heard about and I know nothing about. So kind of give me a rundown, like what that whole thing is and sort of how you got into this. And I like your video game background too, because that's probably going to be a big part of it.
Well, video games tend to permeate a lot of my conversations. So yeah, it makes sense. Yes, I work at Twitch. So Twitch is a live streaming platform, essentially. It started off with a very big focus and primarily, honestly, like with gaming. And this is like back when it first started, all it was a lot of people just going on streaming gaming while they were playing their games, etc. It kind of spawned, in my mind, I think it was around the same time as like when YouTube people would like do their playthroughs and stuff like that. I don't know if you ever watched like playthroughs of games on YouTube. I used to for horror games because I can't play them, but I love watching them.
I never did because honestly, I stopped playing video games religiously probably in my mid-20s. And then, I have a PS4 now, and I have a bunch of games that I've never played. It was like, okay, one day I'll get to them, and I don't have any time to now. And I'm kind of afraid that if I get addicted to these things and I go online where it just never ends, that I'm going to be
you have to it's definitely an opportunity cost. You have to like cut out a piece of your life. So it's almost like doing a deal with the game. Like, all right, well, I guess I don't have friends anymore. I'm only going to play this. So, so Twitch has evolved a lot since then. So now it is still very much a live streaming platform. But especially like the work that I do, like I try to work more to diversify a lot of like what's on the platform. So working with creators that, yes, play games because that is still a big bread and butter of Twitch. But what else are creators doing? And creators can do anything from podcasts and recording like these kind of sessions and things like that to crafting cosplay on stream or teaching dance or playing music or just doing art in general. So it's grown so much and it's really beautiful to see the diversity. And the work that I try to do specifically is to try to get more people that look like us to be represented on Twitch. So I try to imbue a lot of my work with underrepresented groups or marginalized communities, I'd rather say.
Interesting. So how does that work? Because if you have like what you might call a marginalized group, if they are not making content that could be on Twitch, is that more of I'm reaching out to them to say, here's what you could potentially do and here's how it works? Or are they already creating something and they have no clue how to manipulate this world?
So they'll be on the platform typically, and they'll have reached a certain like partner status with Twitch. So then I can start working with them. My role has changed a bit, but this is kind of like historically what it would be. So like it was qualifications and stuff like that, and then you reach out to them. They're already creating content, but then it's creating a program that maybe highlights that kind of content. So for example, in August, I did one around art. So it was all different kinds of artists. So anything from like digital art to 3D sculptures to live sculpture to animation, cosplay, whatever it is, and do a program for a month for them specifically, give them a little bit of featuring, also do a lot of resourcing for like webinars and stuff like that. And these kind of programs, like if this, like once people kind of hear this and they'll be like, wait, why wasn't I like part of those programs? It's more because like they're very experimental. We're trying to see how we can do this and reach creators at scale, right? So it's not because it's like anything new, but like it's more of just like we're a very small team, and so we're trying to do as much of an impact right now to see how can we replicate this on a larger scale and impact more of those creators. So for example, back to your question, with that program, it was my focus was trying to get as many underrepresented group creators in there who have never had any kind of opportunities like featuring and stuff like that. So non-men, non-white, any kind of like invisible or visible like disability, whatever it is, trying to feature them, because a lot of times it can be harder for them to get the amount of audience and community that you kind of get with like the typical people or content creators that you think of when you think of like a content creator, who are typically cis, white, straight, able-bodied men. So trying to kind of detract from that and give an opportunity to other creators who maybe haven't had that opportunity yet.
So how does that really work? Because I would think that if you're creating, let's say you're creating a podcast and you're on Twitch, that wouldn't it be, independent of your race, religion, creed, whatever, that you would get noticed based on your content? Or is there something else going on there that maybe somebody has an advantage because they pay for a service, or they have an advantage because they're talking about specific content? Like, wouldn't it be naturally just indiscriminate about, all the things that we talked about there? Or is there something else going on that is making it easier for certain people to get noticed in this whole field?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do want to preface that all of these are like my opinions.
Understandable.
They don't reflect Twitch at all. So in my opinion, I think what has happening, and it's not exclusive to Twitch, I think it happens across any of the behemoths in kind of like streaming. So you think of like YouTube, Facebook, now TikTok is also pretty big, Instagram. What happens there is essentially comes down to a following, right? So where does the audience live that will cater or watch that particular content, right? So like, let's say you and I are doing a podcast. Well, naturally we're going to attract other audience members that kind of resonate with our identities. And so because those audience members don't yet exist completely on any specific platform, right now it's a little bit of how do we bolster the creators so that we can attract communities and audiences that don't yet reside on Twitch, right? So it's less about like acquiring a particular creator that is off platform, but more of like, how do we elevate creators so that we can say that this is a safe space for community members and audiences to watch as well. Like Twitch belongs to everyone, and I assume that YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, Instagram, they all believe the same thing, right? It belongs to everyone. It's not for one particular creed, race, whatever. But it's just a matter of those audiences don't yet exist on one particular hub altogether. And so that's where I think, in my opinion, like bolstering like marginalized creators or group creators from marginalized communities, by helping them shine, we show that, hey, this is a safe space for audience members to also come watch content that relates to them, things that they'll understand, right? Or that they may relate to a little bit more.
Okay. So that was my confusion, because I just assumed that Twitch was a video game, like primarily everybody who goes in there plays video games, because that's all I hear. It's like, I'm going to be live streaming on Twitch playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. And that's what people go to. Yeah. Like, I had no idea it was more than just video games. I just assumed that was the bread and butter, or maybe it is the bread and butter. It is the bread and butter.
Yeah, for sure.
So, is it more along the lines of the people who are in there who are really good at their, let's just say, the video games? You got this person who you don't see their face necessarily, maybe you do in the corner, but they're so good at playing X game and everybody wants to see them play. They want to see them beat the level or do whatever, that they're going to pay to, I guess, have them do it. Is that how it's normally working now?
The revenue model for Twitch is you can subscribe. And that is like a monthly subscription. It's in 3 tiers, each of them costing a little bit more. The higher tier you go, you get access to like their emotes and stuff like that, and you get a little badge. But there's also other ways to monetize. So there's like bits, so you can kind of like use that to cheer. Like if something big happens in like the stream, you can like cheer them, and it's kind of like 100 bits is like $1. So like, you can donate quite a bit. Or you can, as a creator, you can have your audiences watch ads for you, and that's a way to help monetize when your audiences, especially right now in the pandemic, maybe don't have the financial situation to subscribe to you.
Right.
It's a way to monetize. So that aside, and then with the creators, like the content itself, like you'd be surprised, a lot of people, if you want to watch somebody be really good, yes, there are those creators, right? They're the pro creators, like they're the ones that are probably already on a team of some sort, or like let's say you want to do like watch like Valorant or Overwatch, like there are some really pro top tier creators for that. But personally, what I think Twitch is really good at is like we show like the humanity and kind of like the mistakes that people make live, right? So you see how human they are. It's like, oh, they messed up, like, but you see like that reaction, what they do and all that stuff. Like that to me is so much more entertaining than seeing like pure perfection, because for that, in my mind, you can watch like a curated video on demand, right? And just see like how they got from point A to point B. But the streaming aspect, you get to see all like the mishaps and like the mistakes here, or like the, oh my God, or like even on the flip side, like the super like amazing moments where they really reached a peak in the game or something, or they overcame a challenge, that whether it's a game or like, let's say like they've been producing a song, because a lot of DJs have been doing that now, where they'll produce music live on stream.
Oh wow.
And so like they'll be going through that, and people love to just sit there and like have it on the background, watch it, interact with it, ask questions. And so it's now become almost like a process stream, right? So now you're seeing how the person thinks, you're interacting with them, you're interacting with everyone else in their chat, in their community, you know? So
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the most part, when somebody signs up on Twitch and whatever, it's video games, DJing or whatnot, they are pretty much unknown. So they have to sort of build a following within the community, correct?
Yeah.
So how does Twitch make it, I don't want to say make it easier, but how does this whole thing happen? Is it mostly or organic? The more your stuff you put out there, the more likely people are going to hear it, and then vice versa? Or it's, hey, if you want to subscribe to this aspect, whatever, we can help bump your channel up. We can help get you exposed to other people. Is that another aspect of it, or does that even exist?
Good question. Right now, well, in general, like it's quite difficult, and this is not just like a Twitch thing. Like it's always been like in any other company that I've worked at, like working and promoting another platform, or whether that be social media or like back in my like ads days, like it's really difficult to like even promote like other kind of like partnerships and stuff like that. I think in general, like while we can provide some sort of best practices, it's really difficult to say like, oh, go to Twitter, go TikTok, Instagram, Discord, whatever it might be. We have a really good partnership with Discord, but in general, it's more of, we can give some sort of resources, but there's also a ton of resources online to like look it up. In terms of networking on Twitch, there is like discovery on Twitch, and where I think Twitch is constantly trying to improve it, especially with like the advent of like TikTok and their algorithm being amazing. Like it really, really is. Twitch is working, and I'm assuming also like the other giants are working very much to try to get back to that level of how do we help discovery, because that's the biggest thing right now. With the pandemic, a lot of people started turning to more like in-home kind of like activities, and a lot of that can be streaming. It's a way to connect with people and bring a social aspect back to your home. Gotcha. So now what that's created is almost like this inflation of creators and content. And so now sticking out or standing out is a little bit more difficult than it used to be.
Yes, I'm learning that too as I create this whole thing here. But I'm trying to figure out too. So going back to the team that you're working on now. So are you guys focused on getting people onto the Twitch platform who maybe have a passion, DJ, music, whatever? They don't know about Twitch, or they don't understand, or don't think that they can succeed in it. Are you guys reaching out to them, or is it people who are coming onto Twitch and they're just not getting any traction, and then you're helping them sort of see where they can improve on their own channel or content to make it more easily accessible? Where does it fall into that?
So I actually can't really talk about my current position yet, because it hasn't been like super widespread, but some of the experiments we've been working on and things like that, they are existing creators on Twitch. So they're all like partners to some degree. And we're trying to see like kind of like those programs that I was talking about before, of like, how can we tailor this? What educational resources are going to be best for them? What are, as kind of like a critical mass of a need on Twitch? Is it monetization help? Is it discovery help? Is it how to engage with the community, safety and moderation? And all those things are always constantly in flux. And it's one of those things where it's like, the more that you develop those things or create resources for it, the more that there's going to be a need, more questions come up. And that's exciting, right? More complex questions come up, you know?
Exactly.
So, but we are reaching out to creators that are already on Twitch and are partner to some degree, whether they new, veteran, in middle, whatever it might be. Like right now, we don't have that yet, like defined.
Gotcha. You're still experimenting with it. What does this look like? How can we get better and whatnot? Okay. Yeah. So have they received, as much as you can tell me, have they received any pushback from people who say, hey, wait a minute, I may not fit into this demographic here. What about me? I don't know how to get my channel up and running. Are they getting pushback with that? So that's always like a common thing for us, because like I forget the number, but it's well into the thousands just for North America of partners. Meanwhile, our team that works on it is like 7, right? So, 7 people for the entire country.
Yes. So for Canada and the US, so for North America. So it's challenging, right? Like, and we, as much, like, I can tell you for a fact, everyone on this team, like, would love nothing more than be able to reach out to everybody and be able to, like, kind of like octopus hand, like, be able to solve 8 problems in 1 minute, right? Yeah. And sadly, we can't. And that is always, like, challenging, especially for me, because I always get attached to creators that I talk to. I'm like, oh, but if I could just help you a little bit more, like, but
Yeah.
it's, if I do that, then it's another creator who didn't get a chance, who hasn't talked to Twitch staff yet, so.
I can definitely see that as being a frustration where you want to help somebody so much, but literally you're stretched so thin because you have, again, 7 people for God knows how many people on Twitch who are like, meet me next. I want to tell me, how do I do this? I can't figure it out. And it kind of goes partially back to how I've seen a shift in our culture, because one of the things that we had talked about earlier off camera was about how this whole thing is evolving now. So where everything is becoming online, this new metaverse that Mark Zuckerberg has talked about, that just freaks me out how this whole thing could look. I mean, I know they talk about it. It's the best thing since sliced bread, be all VR and raw avatars. But man, it's like you go back to see some of those old movies. Like, are the robots going to take over one day? Or what? Are we going to lose our social skills? Has that been something that, as best as you can say, has been brought up? Like, we want to help out people so much to succeed on a platform like Twitch. Is there a balance where it's like, are we seeing anything that's happening on the social aspect? People who maybe are so attached to the computers or to the likes and the fame and whatnot, and if they're not getting it, that they're not sure how to process that.
Oh, curious.
It's one of the things that I've seen in my day job too, is that some kids that they're so, especially young kids, because when I grew up, we had Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. There was no social media. There was no. The internet was AOL dial. Remember, you used to dial up and hear that.
Oh my god!
Like, that was our internet.
Horrifying sounds. Yeah,
exactly. And watching a web page there, or looking at a web page back on AOL, it's like numbers and nothing exciting. It's like, here's your information. That's it. Now it's a whole new interactive thing, and I'm always curious to see how these young kids who are 14 and 15, the mind's not fully developed yet at that age, and they're so used to the screen, and that they're losing social skills, or they don't know how to deal with some of the bullying that even I've seen some bullying online. It's like, it's a whole nother level. I mean, I had somebody post online like, yeah, I'm a psychopath, dude. Don't mess with me. Really? Like, there's people out there that actually put this stuff out there, and like, I would believe you are. The fact that you say that, like, that's just, do you ever get outside? Do you ever go talk to human civilization out here? Or is this all you're doing is sitting in front of a computer all day doing that? So that's just something I wonder. I always ask people in the tech industry, like, how do you find that balance? And is there anything that the organization is working on to say, yeah, we understand there's a social responsibility. We don't want to jump full into everything. But then again, there's also the money aspect. These are all companies that have to make money. Yeah. So I'm always curious to see how you guys talk about the balance as to what we can do, what we shouldn't do. Is there somebody that we see in our platform that it's like, this person needs to talk to somebody that, maybe you need to get away from the screen? Have you seen that in your own personal interaction?
That was a little tricky because because it has been coming up, right? And this is no like news. Like, there's a lot of things that are going on around social media and streaming in general about what happens when you get a raid of people, or like a group of people that are just what's called like hate raiding, and they're just going from page to page, dumping all this hate on a creator who's just trying to like have a good time with their community and stuff like that. But they're like, they're doing horrible things, or they're doing what's called like swatting, where they like make a phone call and stuff like that. And it's like, what?
I've seen that in real life.
I cannot wrap my head around why anybody would want to inflict such harm on someone they don't know. But the difficult part is that all that happens off platform, right? So like, that's a difficult part, I think, with any of these like streaming platforms, or really social media in general, is that because it's happening off platform, a lot of times you can't, like, it's hard to pinpoint. It's hard to get in touch with local law enforcement, because sometimes they'll use a VPN for that. So then it makes it seem like they're not even in the US. How do you even track that anymore, So there's very limited things that I think the platform itself can do. And that's not just unique to Twitch. I think in general, like, it's more of like, in the future, right? And this is just my own opinion. I still like try to help out with a nonprofit called I Can Help. And what they focus on is digital safety, and almost like a social digital hygiene of like, how can we help companies, law enforcement, understand the impact that something like cyberbullying and stuff like that can have on a child, especially. In my mind, like, what would need to happen is almost like this board of like representatives from almost like every single platform to be like, okay, working in tandem with like law enforcement of how can we prevent this? And it's nonprofits like this that can help, that can create that liaison, right? Because a lot of times, like, that would require what we used to run into with I Can Help is law enforcement a lot of times may not know how Snapchat works, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Like, so first you have to get them up to speed on that, and then how to like assign like, okay, this is a threat, this is not a threat, this is bullying, this can lead to this, that would mean that you would need to duplicate and not triplicate your staff, right? So
unbelievable. Trust me, I've seen it. Yes. Yeah. Have you guys talked about what China's doing with this whole thing?
Mm-mm.
So apparently, what they're doing over there, and again, this is just from what I'm hearing. I don't live there to see it, but they've taken a stance on social media like TikTok because everything's filtered through the government.
Oh, yeah.
So they will just tell you what you can see on TikTok or on YouTube, or whatever.
The censorship, yeah.
And they will make sure that if you're like scrolling too much, it stops it. And you have to read something that's productive, like math or whatever, because
honestly,
they're trying to build a society where people aren't addicted to this stuff and they're actually learning things to make the country better.
Yeah.
In a way, you like what they're doing, but at the same time, it is a form of censorship. They're telling you what you can and can't see. So you have our model over here, which is here's everything. We don't want to censor anything, but then we see the negative side with that.
Yep.
The extreme on the other side is we'll tell you what you can and cannot see. You're going to not get addicted to it, or less likely. You're going to learn a lot of better stuff because we're going to show you other things that are productive, like math and rocket science and whatnot. But we're also telling you. So it's like you have two different extremes about this whole social media experiment. I'm really curious to see who's going to come out ahead of this in like 20 years. Like whose way was right was better. Because then it gets into our whole laws here about constitutionality, freedom of speech. And I know that probably has been tackled so many times on these platforms behind the scenes. It's like, we don't want to censor anything, but at the same time, if we don't have any sort of control, there's going to be that element that's just going to just go in there and just try and destroy it. And it's like, how do you really balance it? So I don't envy people who are behind the scenes at some of these companies, like the things that you probably have to go through. And then you get the money involved, all the investors like, where's my profits at? So, you got to, it's a whole different beast there. So, that's one of the areas where I say people think, tech jobs are so glorious from outside. They get paid all this money there. You get to work on computer, you get to play video games all day. And in real life, it's like I may get paid okay, considering where I live. I may play, considering where you live is a big difference.
Yes.
$150,000 here is nothing. $150,000 in Topeka, Kansas, you're living like a king.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's nothing. people forget that aspect of it.
Absolutely.
But to be able to say, that's all well and good, but there's a lot of things that we see here that are like, even us, like, people who work in tech need counseling sometimes with some of the things that are happening
absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
It's
like,
nuts.
I mean, I'm super like open and about like mental health and going to therapy. Like I think everybody should, like we all, especially pandemic, like we all need some sort of help. I mean, our poor therapist staffs like all across like the US, I think are just, I feel for them too, because I can only imagine like you're in the position where you're listening to somebody else like and helping them process everything. How do you stop? At least for me, like I'm way too emotional and empathic a person. Like I would immediately carry one session with me for the rest of the day and be like, I'm done. So I don't know how they're doing it, but
it's crazy.
The hate, I think that happens a lot. Like people tend to forget that, and that's not just. And now this is kind of like veering away from just Twitch. It's just in my work history in general. Like some of the clients that I used to work with or have worked with at any company, they tend to forget that you're a human being a lot of the time, right? Like it's very much like, well, your job is to help me. It's like my job is to unfortunately make money for the company so I can help you. Like, let's not forget that. And second of all, like you're unfortunately not the only person that I work with, right? So it's like when you become hyper demanding or you want, a 3-hour call right now and it has to be like this or I'm leaving. It's like, do you really get away with those threats like that much, So it's sad. I think that in general, people tend to lose touch with their empathy of like, how do you understand? What are you doing to try to understand where that person's coming from, right? And I think the pandemic and like losing our like social aspect of our lives possibly has kind of reduced that a little bit. I'm not sure.
It's an interesting. I mean, we won't know for several years. But you're kind of seeing the writing on the wall. Like it says, who knows how this is going to look. We'll all keep our fingers crossed, but it always concerns me for the younger people, because people who are our age, like in our 30s, it's like we've seen enough that we can filter out certain things. Things may bother us, but we can get on, and we know we have a lot to lose if we screw up.
Right.
So we can handle that. But when you're a 15, 16-year-old kid and your mind's not even in the right place, you don't know how to handle these things.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's in your parents, it's like they don't know what you're doing online half the time because they're working. No fault of their own.
Exactly.
But they can't police you the whole time. And it's just, you see how, I don't know. We're all trying to figure out the right answer. Nobody knows it yet. I don't know it.
I definitely don't.
I just talk to everybody I can. My biggest thing is if I can get more information out there, eventually people can figure out the best decision for them. But it's not going to be the same solution for anything, as I've seen many times and everything else.
Yep.
But I'm curious that you got into Twitch. We'll get into some a little more of a positive vibe here. You got into Twitch because you were an avid video gamer, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to go. I was working in ad tech before this. So my first job out of college was actually working for the County of San Mateo. I was in child support. I was a case manager there. So that's where all my like tough skin comes from. Like now, like at work, nothing really bothers me once you get like the kind of threats you do at child support.
That's work experience you can't
First out of college too.
Yes.
But after that, I wanted to always do something with gaming. And so I had the amazing opportunity through some connections and referrals to get into advertising technology, so ad tech, here in San Francisco, at what was an ad network for mobile gaming. So it was like all those ads you see like back, in what was it that I was working there, 2014. So like it would like pop up after every level. Like we were part of that.
It was like Words with Friends.
Yeah, kind of like that.
I got into that for a while.
The little ads, yeah, anything that you would see in like the little banner, whatever. So like all that stuff. And I really enjoyed it. I made some really great connections there, a really great company. From there, took a break and didn't want to go back into ad tech, and then went into Twitter MoPub. So there also another was on their ad tech arm. And that was less gaming. And I think it was like that opportunity was amazing. The people that I worked with were really, really exceptional and great, extremely intelligent. So I learned a lot there. And I think my tenure there, I decided like I wanted to go back into something related to gaming, but it wasn't just gaming anymore. My passion started like igniting of I want to make a difference for people. I want to make sure that people like us are starting to get the same opportunities that others do. So I wanted to move into, when I looked at the opportunity at Twitch, it lined up. It gave me enough freedom where I could work. Obviously, like I had to work with a set of accounts that were just, financially or business wise made sense. But there was enough wiggle room for me to be able to work with other creators that I thought could use just like a little bit of a push, and that would like really skyrocket them because they never had that kind of attention before.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of like my little trajectory into Twitch.
That's awesome. Now, have you still play a lot of video games, correct?
I still play a ton of
All right. Yeah. Too much?
Well,
it's like, well,
that's subjective. So lately I have, because one of the games that I've played for the longest time, Final Fantasy 14, it's an MMO, which means that it never really ends. Like you just kind of keep going online and you play online with friends and stuff like that. So actually, I play a lot with like one of your other featured guests that was on, I think, one of the last episodes.
Yes, he told me.
Yeah. So I now, because the new expansion for that has come up, like I am playing a little bit more than I probably should, like maybe staying up till 3 or 4 in the morning, but still wake up like a responsible adult and do my job.
So that just blows my mind, because when I was a kid, my favorite RPG, since you like RPGs, was Chrono Trigger.
Oh,
that was my favorite game, and I would
absolutely.
You would just get lost in the game, but back then, you could play the game 50 hours if you were lucky, and that was 50 hours out of a $60 game. That's a lot. Yeah. Now it's like you could pay $50 for a game and you're spending infinite amount of hours on there. Like, how do you keep? I'm always curious to ask developers. I know you're not developing the games, but I'm always curious how these developers do that. Where, how do you make a game that at one point was so exciting to get to the ending of it because of the path that you built with these RPG games, but now it's like it never ends.
Yeah.
I mean, I get there's two sides of it. There's the creator aspect who just loves to create this whole world and then get immersed in it, and you could do all these different levels. And then, of course, there's the financial side that says, well, if we keep people playing longer, how do we monetize that? Which I understand, it's a business.
Yeah.
But just from the creator point of view, like, how do you actually, from the player point of view, because you're still playing this one, it's like, how do you see the progression of RPG games as now, for example? Because that's the big one, I think, where you get so lost into the world. Is it sort of like a therapeutic thing, like a way to get away from the real world? Is it sort of like things that can help you in your own life? How does that work with how you see these games now?
You actually touched on a couple of things that, like, I know probably will sound very far-fetched, but one aspect, I actually picked this game up because I played it for a while, like back in like 2013, 14, I think, for about like 2-3 years, and then stopped for like the longest time and like really didn't get back into it. And then at the start of the pandemic, I picked it back up again because I couldn't go outside. So I was like, if I just got a couple people on to like go and play with me, start a guild and stuff like that, like, well, now I have a way to like chat with them. Now I have a way to interact with them without having to be in person. And now it's just kind of carried through, right? So, but in terms of like what it does, like you'd be surprised, like the skills that you get when you're like, this is going to sound really geeky, so just bear with me, but like you played RPGs. So when you have to coordinate, like let's say you're the tank and you have to coordinate and like name like all the safe spots for your team, look out, or like let's say you're healing, you got to prioritize who you got to go through. It's all team communication. It's how do you work in a team? What priority comes first, right? Like how do you interact with others in very critical situations? Which I know sounds kind of far-fetched. It's like, it's just a game. It's like, no, you can mess up really bad in a game if you don't know how to communicate properly,
Yes. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, where it's you're in a team. You guys are on a quest to go save the world or whatever it is in the game.
Yeah.
And then you rely on your teammates to do certain things. Like your job is A, your job is B, and so forth. Well, like back when we were playing Super Nintendo games, it's like the computer just did all that work for you. You said, okay, I'll put in a code and you're going to do that. And there we go. I know what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. But if the person on the other end now, because it's a live person controlling that avatar, doesn't do what you say and everybody loses, I can imagine it would be frustrating. On the one hand, that sounds like it does do good as far as coordination with people.
Yes.
In terms of learning how to communicate with people, even though it's not real life, you're learning how to direct people to do certain things. And that can be I can see that as being a benefit in a real job, whatever, when you're working with a team of people, different needs, different personalities, different goals, and how do you manage that? So I can see that being a positive thing there. But I'm always curious, like, because you're probably partners with people around the world, correct?
Yeah. Because most of the time it's not like a full party that we have, so we need somebody from around the world or
That's
on the
crazy.
server at least.
Because it could be like noon here, and it could be like 2 a.m. in Russia, and someone's like, "Hey, I'm down to play." Wow,
basically, yeah.
That's one of the reasons, like going back to Chrono Trigger, why I like that game so much. And what was
such
that,
a great game.
I was like 92, so I must have been 9-10 years. I forgot how old I was. I forgot when it came out.
I think it was 95, 96.
95, so I was like 12 years old then. Okay, perfect age to play video games, I guess. What made that game so special, and this is probably the only time I'll ever geek out, is that it was a collaboration between the guy that created Dragon Ball Z, the guy that created Final Fantasy, and then the composer that made all the music. So because they put their brains together and created this game, everything just flowed. So it allowed you to get into it. I never got into the earlier Final Fantasies, and I just did what wasn't my thing. But that game just for a 16-bit game to immerse you in a different world and be able to do all that. Yeah. Especially looking back at my age now, like that was pretty impressive back in the day.
Yeah. And also not to mention like the number of endings you could get with Chrono Trigger.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever like got through all of them, but like
maybe I did at some point.
To be fair, like I only did when it was an emulator. So like there's no way I could have done it like, standard, because you could save anywhere. But I remember like that was one of the few RPGs I played through multiple times, because Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross are like top tier for me.
Chrono Cross, yeah. The fact that you get, I wasn't too big on like there was 80 characters you could be in Chrono Cross.
You had to play I think like 4 times through to get all of them.
But the whole idea was the world that they immersed you in. Yeah. And I mean, that was just creativity at its best. Even though it was a video game, so your parents like, why are you sitting there playing a video game for 10 hours a day, and you're just sitting at the screen? I can't get off of this thing.
But RPGs are like really good for, I don't know, maybe because I grew up with games, but like I feel like RPGs are really good for younger minds too, because it's like it teaches you like, okay, like how do you problem solve this, almost like, especially when it's like single player, right? Like Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, any of the Final Fantasies before this, you were the only person controlling, so you had to designate what each person was doing. You had to think about how you're going to react to these things. What are you going to jeopardize for this? What are you going to sacrifice for this attack? And so it seems simple up front, but
in a weird way, when I look back at that time in my life, I remember how, even though it was a video game and I knew that, there were certain things about how you make decisions in a game that you can sort of tailor to real life. Because when you're a kid, you may not it's kind of expected. You don't always know the decisions you make and what the consequences can be. Whereas in a video game, if you make a bad choice, it's a game. No one gets hurt. But you sort of learn those little things there that I started to pick up at like 14, whatever, how old I was, and bring them to real life. Now, I had a danger with it too, because if I played it too much, I didn't realize at the time. As I got older, I started seeing it.
Yeah.
Even back then in the 90s, I remember being in junior high school, and there were times where I was a little antisocial with people because I just wanted to go and play the game. And nobody knew at the time what that really meant, because video games were just, little, Pong or whatever. That's what our parents thought it was.
Yes.
Like, you can't, how do you get addicted to this thing, whatever. But I saw it back then where there were times where, I'm not blaming it, but I saw a little bit of antisocialness in my youth because I just wanted to go and play the video games. Or I started to cross over a little bit into what's fantasy and what's real life. Yeah. And it wasn't until I got older and started doing, adult things, getting out there, getting college, getting a job, whatever, that you started seeing, man, that part of my life, I never developed certain aspects of my social skills because I was so involved in the video games. And when I got older, I had to really work to make up for that. Yeah. And again, that was a 16-bit game that was tops 50 hours. Yeah. The thing that concerns me now so much, you playing Final Fantasy IV, you're an adult. You know how to balance your time on that. I know you do that. Yeah. It concerns me for the young kids who are 10, 12 years old, who are just so many hours on a video game. Like, I'm always concerned, like, are they losing their social skills with that? I'm just curious, when you interact with people online, do you know like their age group, or it just says player XYZ wants to play with you?
So for Final Fantasy, well, there's two examples I think. Like, one was Overwatch. I don't play as much anymore, and then the other was Final Fantasy 14 that I do. But in both instances, you can pair up with your friends, and then you go and search for the remaining slots in your party. So you really don't know who else is on there. And then it's up to you for like Overwatch to enable voice chat. For Final Fantasy 14, there's no voice chat. There's just typing chat. Okay. So it's a little bit more helpful. But there's like a whole community side aspect to Final Fantasy 14, with whether that be like guilds and stuff like that, that I think, kind of like what we were kind of talking off before the podcast, was this almost second life that people start to carry in games, right? And I think like MMORPGs, like, they tend to do that as well, where like you can create a character and you, however much you want to like create a whole backstory to them, you can, right? The tools are there for you. Or to like the other side of the extreme, where it's like VR chat, where it's like you are creating an entirely custom persona for yourself to interact with others on the internet. So it's like super meta. You're now taking out the interpersonal like kind of like interaction that you get, but you're replacing it with a virtual like interaction. I don't know enough about like the psychology behind it and how that affects like either side. I don't know if we know that yet, but kind of curious to think about, right?
Again, it's always something that I thought about, or I've been thinking about more as I get older, and I'm doing my, you're doing your adult thing, you got your home, you got your jobs and whatever. And then when you see the young kids, like, we sort of take it for granted, or I do until I stop and pay attention. But you go to like a social get together and somebody brings their kid, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. The kid's usually in the corner on the iPad or the iPhone now. Or to make the kid behave, it's like, here's the iPad, go play Angry Birds or whatever the game is. Whereas before it was like, hey, go play with those kids there. Go play kickball. True. Go in the backyard, do what kids do. Get dirty, hurt yourself. It was just, that's what you were supposed to do.
To be clear, I still hurt myself running around like an idiot. So yeah, I guess I never grew up in that part. But yeah.
Well, hey, it still follows you around.
Yeah. So maybe that was a social skill I missed.
See, we all have something. Trust me. But yeah, it was always. I'm just seeing the progression now of how even at a young age, we're giving the kids the phones and the iPads. And I get for the parents, especially around here, both parents are working. Yeah. I think it was San Mateo County. I told somebody, one of my last guests, that like, and if you want to have a home in San Mateo County, just like a 1960s fixer-upper that maybe has a little bit of a backyard, to even have that in that county, you need a minimum of like $300,000. Yeah. So both parents have to work just to be able to afford what you can go to like, North Dakota for and get for $50,000. Right. Same exact house, just you plop it over here in the Bay Area, the value just skyrockets. So both parents have to work to make at least $300,000. And so with the kid not having the parents around a lot, it usually is, when we come home, I got to be on the computer for work here to play with the iPad. Yeah, true. And I'm curious to see how the transition is progressing. Like, I know video game developers like it because if you're getting used to the interaction now, like there's that game Roblox.
Oh,
you
yeah.
heard that game?
Yeah.
I have a coworker whose daughter, I think she's like 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She's so addicted to the game that she's always asking her dad, hey, can I have your credit card? I need to buy more. I don't know what it is that they're buying on there. And he's like, how much do you need? Like $40. Like, what?
Oh, no.
So these kids, they're so getting used to the video game that now they just need to buy the currency and they don't understand what money is. So they're just asking mom and dad for the credit card.
True.
I mean, it's smart if you're the creator. I mean, hey, that's a good business model.
Yeah.
But without the kids understanding the concept of a dollar, and then mom and dad are like, how much is that game costing me?
Right. Yeah. And that whole model, like that really, I remember back in like the mobile ad days, like there was like Apple and Google had to step in because originally it didn't, like there were, I forget what step it was, it's so long ago now, but like you could easily make transactions like super quickly and stuff like that. And then also like about, I want to say like 2015 maybe or 2014, they changed like the little, it used to say free on the App Store. Like for example, because I have an iPhone, it used to say free and now it says get, and it tells you that there's in-app purchases because so much was happening where kids would take the phone and they just buy a bunch of stuff. Like there were so many news reports that were like, my kid just spent like $3,000 on a game, not realizing like each one of those interactions costs something, right? So
wait, so that's why, I saw that and I just in my head, free to get. That was actually done on purpose because kids were buying, or they were downloading free games.
Yes.
And then not realizing that when they downloaded them that everything in there was pay to play sort of.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Because there was, I think, a couple lawsuits because it's like, well, the nomenclature is incorrect. It's not free because there's things to purchase inside and stuff like that. So
keep going.
Yeah. the mood lighting. Yeah. So it was really interesting. I remember when that happened, it was like, we all thought, oh no, like this is going to impact, in-app purchases, which we weren't really like tracking as an ad network and things like that, but too much. But it was, kind of curious how like even something like that had to change so dramatically, but yeah, it's funny when you think about like and how that model, in my mind at least, like that went from being in mobile games, like that whole like pay to play ish kind of thing where you're paying for either the currency in the game, usually the premium economy, or to unlock things faster or get new skins and stuff like that. That started to permeate a lot more into like the console gaming. So now it's really common for console games to have that everlasting quality to them, where it's like something that you don't really finish, like Overwatch. Final Fantasy you do finish, there's endgame, but like all that stuff. But now it's like, okay, especially for like FPS and stuff like that, so first person shooters, like Overwatch, you're paying for skins, you're paying for, all this stuff. So it's almost like people are now conditioned. We have a whole generation conditioned to that being normal. Yeah. Where it's really curious how those things always like kind of follow a generation. But
are you into this whole NFT thing? Do you understand it?
I understand part of it, and I don't have the money to invest in them, but I hear everyone, it's kind of like, like back, which I hit myself for, but like when everyone was like, oh, buy Bitcoin, like years and years ago. And I feel like NFTs this time, like everyone's kind of like a little bit more open to it because they're like, okay, well, we saw what happened with Bitcoin. Like there's a ton of money being moved around with that.
Well, I wouldn't sweat too much about Bitcoin. You heard about the guy that lost his wallet?
No.
You didn't hear about that guy? One of the first investors at Bitcoin had like 50,000 Bitcoin, like the whole Bitcoin, on a hard drive. He threw the hard drive away. He's been searching for 8 years in the same dump to try and find his hard drive because, I guess how Bitcoin, you can't just call customer service and reset my password. You lose your wallet, you're done.
That's it, yeah.
So I don't even know how many millions of dollars that translates into now. But yeah, he threw away his hard drive and he's been digging in that dumps for about 8 years in the city, whatever that was at. They were like, hey, we're done helping you, man. That thing's long gone.
Holy.
So don't feel like you missed out an opportunity because there's people who had it worse than that.
Yeah, I guess so. It would have been worse to have it than lose it.
Yes, but this NFT thing, this non-fungible token, and for me, I heard it at first thinking, okay, this is you own like a picture but you don't really own it. Like I don't really. People were trying to explain it to me as in you own like this cup here, like that's your own personal thing. Now you can send copies of it to anywhere, but you own the rights.
The original,
to it.
Yes,
exactly. And I'm like, that blows my mind because if I take a picture of it, okay, well I have the picture. What are you gonna do? It's the same thing to me. And then they explain that it's not the same thing. This is the original. If you have the original, like I guess NBA cards are digital currency now. If you have the original one of LeBron James dunking over or Steph Curry's 3-point breaking record, if you have the original picture of that, you're the one that owns all the rights to it. I'm like, that'd be kidding me. I don't know how sustainable that is. But then somebody else explained to me recently about, how we were talking about in games, you could buy skins, you could buy whatever. But like Overwatch, for example, if you buy a skin, correct me if I'm wrong, if you buy a skin, that works in the game. However, if they decide to just shut down Overwatch like overnight, we're done with it, nobody's playing, you don't get to take that skin with you.
No.
It's attached to the game. Yeah. You just paid to use it. But the way an NFT works, as they were explaining it to me, was imagine if you bought that skin in Overwatch, and if they canceled Overwatch, it doesn't exist anymore, you can take that skin with you and go play it on Final Fantasy. Or whatever.
Like you have the rights to it?
You have the rights to that thing. Like I'm guessing like if you... What do you create, characters on Overwatch, or do you create skins?
You don't. You kind of like buy the skins to use while you're playing the characters. Yeah, okay. So you don't create any characters.
So skin meaning like an outfit or like a weapon or whatever. So imagine taking like that outfit or weapon with you from Overwatch and playing it on Final Fantasy.
How interesting.
Like that's how they explain to me the future of it actually is. And when you put it that way, that makes a little bit more sense because I can see in the future in this meta universe that we're going to be into now, which is a whole
thing.
Yeah. That you can be able to cross use these different tokens. And actually that makes more sense. That could be feasible because now I own this skin forever. This is my skin. I can use it to play that game and this game and this game compared to a picture, which is like, it doesn't, but that's the start of it. They're using that now with like Pokemon and NBA trading cards now, like you get the digital card, but the future of it is like what we were talking about there, the whole skin thing. How can you transfer it to other places? So that's where I see the future in NFTs going. But I'm always curious to ask somebody in the industry, like, okay, I know it's being talked about and how you guys are even just dealing with that. So
yeah, it's curious. The way that I kind of first got my introduction to it was actually because I listened to a lot of electronic music, and a lot of DJs are partnering up with artists to create NFT specific and the DJ would create a very specific sound for like this tiny little moving clip kind of thing, and then the artist would render something for them, and then they would sell it. And like those have some of those have been selling like on the NFT marketplace. I have no idea. They've been reselling for a lot, and so basically it's like you own that particular instance. You can copy it, you can do whatever you want, but like really when it comes back to it, like it's kind of like having an original Picasso. Like you can create copies and resell it, sure, but if somebody goes and double checks what that copy is, they're going to find out it's a copy, it's not the original.
Right.
So
for your own personal benefit, if you're happy with the copy, then hey, all report to you. But to the people who say, no, this is mine, I have the original, nobody else has it, that's where all the money comes in. That's where that unique. And so I get it. I see that as being a future of NFTs. I don't know how. I'm sure I'm going to invest it into at some point. I have no idea where it's going to be at. So when I start seeing, we're in Silicon Valley, so I talked to enough people here already. When I start seeing that you can do what we just talked about, you could go to Overwatch, create a skin that you can take with you to other games. That's when I know to buy into it. That's when I know, okay, now it's reached the point where this is actually something that's going to be sustainable. Like I always talk to people with Bitcoin now and what the ups and downs with it. And do you know a lot about that? About
I know a bit of it because I bought some of the Dogecoin like when that was like a whole thing. And then
you got caught up in the hype.
Yeah, and then Elon Musk ruined it for me. But I made quite a bit of money on it because I bought it back before it was like less than a cent. So now it's like I think at like 15 cents, and I didn't buy very much because I was just like I don't know what this is. I'm not spending a lot of money. So, but it was decent. And so now I just like I sold half of it and I kept half in there. I'm like I have no idea what's gonna happen with this, but I spent a total of $100 on all of this. Like, you know what? I can save that other like half for the future.
It's they always say if you have somebody who knows that this is going to be the future. Like if you could talk to somebody who knew about Bitcoin and you got into it, that would be great. But someone told me, or maybe, it was the Senate test. They had a Senate hearing about this like last week or 2 weeks ago, and I caught a bit of it. And one of the guys who was an expert on this was telling people is that all these cryptocurrencies are controlled mainly by just a small group of people who just they are the ones who are investing so much into some way. When one of them decides to sell a bunch, whatever, that's why this whole thing is in fluctuation.
Always.
It's not the everyday people who have maybe like a few $1,000s in Bitcoin. It's like the big players who have multiple millions in it. They are dictating how this thing goes up and down.
Absolutely.
And like it makes sense. If you're Elon Musk and you got billions of dollars, you could afford to lose a couple $1 million in Bitcoin. You just throw it in there and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Average everyday people like me and you, we can't do that.
Nope.
So when it goes up and down, you have all the power of it.
Yeah. So and then Elon Musk, I think the other day, like announced like that he was going to make Tesla merch exclusively buyable by Dogecoin, which spiked it back up.
I mean, he's smart. That's all done on purpose.
Yeah, honestly, like to have that much control,
GameStop,
that whole another thing. One. I bought in. I didn't buy into that quick enough. And then AMC, I bought and then sold because it went down, and then like the next day, it like shot back up. I'm like, of course it did.
This is the way all these day traders, man. Like Elon Musk has to make one tweet that says "game stunk," and then everybody just jumps on it. That's how much influence and power he has.
Yeah.
He says, you know what? I want that new fill in the blank coin to go up. I'm just gonna tweet that word.
Yep.
Everybody's gonna buy it. If Elon Musk said it, I'm gonna do it.
It's like crazy.
It's crazy the world that we live in, and it kind of goes back to the universe that we were talking about. This metaverse.
Yeah.
Like, I have my opinions on what I think this is gonna be. I don't know. This is just me from personal experience. But if you not really behind the scenes, but you have an insight in the tech industry. What are you seeing there about the future with this VR thing and everybody's now an avatar and nobody's really who they are anymore?
I mean, it's been an advent, I think. I'm not quite sure because I don't dabble in it. I don't know enough about like the VR world to like make any kind of comment, but I think it's really interesting how people are now creating a persona of themselves to interact with others. It's not that that's new, right? Like if you think about like any of like the MMOs, to some extent they allowed you to do that. Mm-hmm. And then there was things like IMVU or like Second Life, like those kind of things like allowed you to create an avatar from scratch, create rooms, interact with people. That was the whole purpose of it, right? To almost do like social interaction online. And now with like the whole metaverse thing, like I was reading something yesterday that was saying like, oh, like people are buying up real estate in the metaverse. And I'm like, what? Like I could barely buy real estate in real life. How the hell am I going to buy this? And like, oh yeah, because it's going to like shoot up. And I'm like, why? What? I have no idea. I really don't.
Are we talking about like monopoly, like houses? How do you buy real estate in the?
I don't know. Like because we bought a house in Final Fantasy 14 for like our guild, and I know how much of a struggle that was, but I have no idea about like this whole like, oh, I'm going to buy real estate in the metaverse and I'm going to develop it. Like I don't know what that's like.
Buying a home in Final Fantasy, is that like?
Don't you dare. It's so basically it's like when you create like a guild or like a clan or something like that with like your friends, if you want like somewhere like where each person can have like their room or like you can go hang out after or whatever. A lot of people use it more for like role playing. We have it just because it was like an achievement for us. In those scenarios, like it's fun, but I've seen people like deck out like the full house and they have like full on like role playing happen online, and I'm like, holy shit, like that's intense.
Just to be clear, when you buy a house in a video game, is it just you have to have X amount of coin and you buy it?
Yeah. Or no, like, you don't pay for it.
Okay, so there's no bidding wars in real life. No one's gonna. There's no interest rates.
Surprising. So the way it works in Final Fantasy is so the house can go if a lot is vacant, right, in any of these wards, people will go and you have to go up to the freaking like for sale sign or the equivalent thereof and keep clicking on it because it can go on sale anywhere from a 12 to 36 hour window. And they don't tell you when it goes on sale to prevent like bots from going in and buying it and like, basically like reselling it online, like for real money. So they created the system where it's like anywhere from 12 to 36 hours, it can go on sale. And you basically just have to stay there clicking endlessly. Like we took turns, like all 6 of us were just like click, 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 click. Okay, I got to go to sleep. Okay, I'll tap in. Click, 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 click.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
Yeah. Curious enough, It was actually like a really interesting, because again, this was all happening during the pandemic, right? Before vaccines, before we could interact, right? It was a really interesting bonding moment because we would all go on like Zoom or like Discord or whatever it is, like put on our cameras or go on voice and like, have a drink with each other and like chit chat and like, one person's like clicking and stuff like that. But we'd like actually have a full on conversation with each other while like our characters were like doing this thing while we were just like mindlessly like clicking and stuff like that. So it was like almost like this fun moment for us to like bond and like do something together kind of thing, So,
well, that's a good spin on it. So you're sitting there going, hey, how was your day going? Click, 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 click. My finger hurts. Can you take over? Yeah, I'll take over. That's
basically, yes.
So you had to, so I'm just thinking, so if you're in the video game and you're standing in front of that for sale sign, is there like somebody from another team there who's trying to push
there's
you?
like a horde of people all crowding it, trying to also get at it too.
So literally it goes on sale and it's that microsecond who clicks it.
Yes.
Jeez,
and the most for us, because we get the first house we tried, like it was like maybe like our 7th, and I remember one of those like two of my friends, one had taken like a shift of like 2 to 3 hours, and then like I jumped on, or my other friend jumped on, or I jumped on next, took it until maybe like 2 a.m. and then my friend was like, I have to do some work and I have to make some international calls, so I'll like click during that. And then right around like, I think it was some absurd time, like 3:45 or 4:45 in the morning, some new person had walked up, and like because like you get tired, you start like chatting with everybody there, like, oh, how's it going, blah blah blah, oh, I know, like and I forget what it was because I took a screenshot of it. It was just like, oh yeah, like I'm just checking in here, like click, and they got it. And they had just got there. Meanwhile, there was like a horde of people that were all just like waiting and doing this, like, oh my God. Murder.
That's gotta suck.
Yeah.
Well, at least you guys had that good bonding moment together.
Yeah.
Figuring that whole thing out. Now, can you even play these games by yourself anymore? Single player?
Yeah, because like for example, Final Fantasy like has a whole story to it, and then when you don't have a party or you don't have friends to play with, like the games do have a function in there to search for people who are also looking to like party up for a dungeon or a boss or whatever it is, and they'll pair you up for that instance, and then you can go and carry on with the rest of the story by yourself. Like it really isn't like it's still very much a single player game, but until you get into it when you want the story. But if you want to like get items, beat bosses, or like do dungeons, and like you can either get a party together yourself or fill any blanks in the party that you might need.
So before it may have been you can beat the game and then you can play the new game plus they used to call it, which is now you have all this experience. Now you can go back and beat those harder bosses to get a different ending. But now is it just once you complete it, you have to team up with other people in order to beat these bosses? Is that how it is now?
Yeah, so like it's kind of similar where like once you beat like the main arc of the game, then you start unlocking the hard modes for dungeons or the hard modes for bosses, and then they'll start to give off items, and that's what's called like the end game. So like all that end game content is really where a lot of people in MMOs dedicate the most of their time.
And that's how they keep people attached to the game.
Yep.
You have to keep playing to get that
game.
one specific item that everybody wants that has this
insane
overpowered
stats.
whatever thing. What was it in I think it wasn't, what was it, the rainbow shell? And that was the rainbow mail, that Chrono Trigger one. It was like that one overpowered item that you had.
It was the what was it? Yeah, the rainbow shell, right?
Something like that.
Because it was like the rainbow weapons. Because in Chrono Cross you could also get them too, and the prism weapons, and they were insanely hard to get. I remember, but they were so pretty.
It was just the fact that you got that one difficult item, and it's okay. I got it. I was already beating the bosses anyway, but now I got this one item, and now I can rest. Now you can't do that in video games. You get they're going to create a new and better item and put it out there.
Yes.
So that's the business aspect of it. You keep them going now.
And it's like it's an interesting balance as a game developer. You have to think like, okay, how much time are we going to give for critical mass to hit of obtaining this item before we launch new gear or levels that will make that obsolete or less than the best, right? And because if you constantly like release something every week, no one's going to want to do it. But if you take too long, everyone's going to leave. So it's always like finding that interesting balance of like, okay, what's the right time frame to develop, to release everything so that people can go and still be intrigued, or like maybe like there's like 3 best items like or weapons. This one you get through a boss, this one you get through a dungeon, this one you get through a series of quests that takes you on this whole thing. Like, is that going to become as obsolete as these 2 that were quicker? So it's all like these interesting mechanics and like planning that developers have to do.
And people don't. people who don't live around here or aren't from Silicon Valley don't realize that that is the reason why these tech companies are very lucrative, or why venture capitalists keep investing in them. That's why they can pay top talent to come out here and work on these games, paying them at minimum $150, but up $3,000-$4,000 to be developers in games, because this is what keeps the method going.
Yeah,
and it just, you see the shift now where everything is tech. Everything is about, because that's the world that we're going in. The metaverse is just, as much as I don't like it, it's the future. It's going to be VR. All these young kids are going to be virtual, and it's just going to be a thing. Schools are probably going to be on the metaverse now.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine?
I can't even. Every time I think I can imagine what the metaverse will look like, I know I'm going to be wrong, because they're going to take it to a level that
not prepared for.
Yeah, like I heard. I don't know if I heard Zuckerberg talk about this, or someone told me this is his mindset, was that he just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be beholden to the government, and he wants to be able to control what he can control, even though he may not be the best person to lead Facebook now because he created it. Doesn't mean you're the best person to lead the company itself.
Exactly, yeah.
But this metaverse thing is just is the next wave that he sees of creativity. And again, it goes back to parts of our earlier conversation, which is there has to be a balance between the future of technology and also just, we're human beings and we have certain social skills, certain needs that we need to do. I mean, when Elon talked about putting chips in everybody's head, I'm like, that's just the end of it right there. I don't even, for somebody that is as independent as he is, the idea of saying we're going to put chips in everybody's head, that's just like, maybe I watched too many movies or something back in the day. I'm like, that just has all kinds of wrong associated with it.
iRobot all over again. Yeah.
Well, it's like why some people are so afraid of the vaccines. I'm not anti-vax, but there's a lot of people saying, hey, if the government's telling me do all this, how do I know what I'm putting in my body? So I'm like, I don't think they're going to click a switch and we're all turning into zombies.
Honestly, yeah.
But at the same time, I get the freedom aspect of it. Like, you should be able to decide what you want to put in your body. And if you decide not to take it and you get sick and you're on your death's bed, it's like you made that choice. But, and that's a whole nother thing right there, that it's just everybody's very opinionated on one side or the other with that. And it's like throwing a piece of food into like the hornet's nest. You just watch them all go after it, and nobody wins at that point.
Nope.
Man, this has been an exciting talk now. This whole thing about Twitch is just a whole, I still can't wrap my head around it. I can't wrap my head about how, what started with video games is now evolving into other creative aspects, music, podcasting, this cosplay thing you're telling me about. I'm sure there's probably other things in the Twitch universe that I just don't know. I don't know what the future of it looks like. What are your thoughts on it, as far as where you see it now and where it's going to be in the future? Is it going to just link up with the metaverse and it's all going to be this virtual thing, or is it going to kind of have its own?
Dang, that's a great question. I think in my like feebled opinion, I don't know if I see like Twitch interacting maybe in the metaverse, and only because I don't know enough about the metaverse or like what's happening with it to like really make a good statement on there. I think Twitch and any of these streaming like platforms in general are coming to an advent of, before it was just gaming, but now it's so much more, right? Like, I mean, even with Twitch, like the growth we've seen with food and drink and music, just from like 2020, like April to December, was exponential growth, like massive. And that's for just about anything, because DJs or artists that couldn't play at concerts anymore, they were going on and doing like benefits, or they were streaming concerts and stuff like that through Twitch.
So food and drink, what does that mean?
People cooking, reviewing food, a lot of cooking though.
Oh, like cooking channels on Twitch.
On Twitch, yeah.
That's
so cool.
That actually brings up another thing. How does Twitch, or are they competing with YouTube? Because it sounds like they're doing the same thing. If I want a cooking channel, I could go to YouTube or Twitch or both. So are they in direct competition, or is there a different market that they're shooting for each?
I would say, in my opinion, so I don't get like quoted on this, so I don't get like hit with a PR later.
Yeah,
Again,
no quotes.
My opinion. I think Yes, it is. It is competition. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, I think, are all competing for creators at this time. I think the majority still exists on Twitch, and there's obviously still news of a lot of creators that go from Facebook to Twitch, Twitch to YouTube, YouTube to Facebook, whoever it is, and any of those permutations. But I think right now I love Twitch. I love everything. But I think that no platform is a one-stop solution yet for everyone. Every platform has a benefit, right? Right now, I think what Twitch has as a really great thing that I've seen just from personal experience is we have really great communities. And a lot of the audiences live there. So when we've seen, and this is not me getting on the record saying anything about anybody's numbers, it's just when creators will leave from one platform to the other, one thing that they forget is that they're losing all their community. They have to start from scratch. Yes, every company, and this is a switch from any platform to any platform, not just Twitch.
Right.
They're going to get some sort of contract deal. That's what pulls them out of one platform, their home platform, to the next, right? And those contracts are usually that's in ad tech or entertainment. Like, those contracts last for a certain amount of time, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. Once that contract ends, have you done the work enough? Because you're usually, as a platform, you're pursuing or trying to acquire more veteran creators who maybe forgot that whole trajectory of having to build your community. So are they doing the same work they did when they were on their home platform and into the new platform to garner that audience, to garner that community? Is that platform doing enough to pull that community with them as well? Are they highlighting creators that will look kind of what we were talking about before, like marginalized groups and stuff like that? Like, are those community members coming and becoming audiences on those platforms? And I think until any of the companies solve that, this is just going to be a game of hot potato between one creator, two creators, however many, going from one platform to the next, taking that lucrative deal, and then realizing that at the end of that deal, they're not making nearly as much money as they were on their home platform, because they've lost all those subscriptions, all that community. And when they try to come back to the home platform, sure, there's going to be some diehards that will move with them. But most of that community, let's say they had 100 followers or 100 concurrent viewers, which is very low, or not low, but just not what you see in the news.
Relative, gotcha.
Yeah. So let's say they had 100 just for ease. So they move over to a different platform. Let's say about 15 follow them to that new platform, which is about 15%. So then now you have 85 audience members on any platform that start to disperse, because they're like, well, I used to watch this creator. I'm going to go find another creator. So when that creator comes back to their home platform, maybe they'll take a fraction of who they had on the next platform. Let's say it's another 50. They'll take maybe 10. Okay, well, they bring 10. And then they expect that everyone that used to subscribe to them, that used to watch them, everything will come back to them. And it doesn't happen like that. So it is competition, but I don't think that, and this is just an objective point of view, I don't think any of the platforms are doing a good enough job to look into the future of what is the risk they're taking by taking this creator from one to the next without considering their community or audiences, the people who are actually making the platform work. They're not considering them in these interactions or exchanges. So
now, when you say contracts, do you mean, we're talking about the big players, the people who have multiple millions of subscribers, that when you're at that level, let's say Twitch wants to keep you on, they'll sign you to a deal saying you do X, Y, and Z, we'll pay you A, B, and C. That's not for every creator then, correct? So if you're on the lower end of the totem pole, if you're new on Twitch and you're just starting to play Overwatch or whatever, and nobody knows you, you're just doing everything for free, correct?
Yeah.
So once you reach a certain point, does Twitch reach out to you and say, hey, we would love you to stay on our platform, and we're going to talk to you about possibly creating a deal? Is that how it normally works?
On Twitch, no. And I'm also I don't want to go too far into that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But no, it was a little different. It's just that when you reach a certain status with Twitch, and I assume with just about any, YouTube, I think also has their kind of their milestones that you have to hit and stuff like that to be able to monetize the channel. Facebook, same thing. So once you hit a certain threshold of concurrent viewership and a bunch of other factors, you can apply for what's called, on Twitch at least, a partner status, and that's you get approved, stuff like that. So once you hit partner status, I think you've hit critical mass of getting concurrent viewers and getting subscriptions and stuff like that. So that in itself already is a contract. You're signing essentially exclusivity to Twitch when you become a partner. And I assume YouTube and Facebook have very similar things. What that means is you cannot stream on a different platform because you've accepted that you're going to be monetizing at this level. So like you have to give like your content rights essentially to Twitch. Now, when somebody else comes and says like, we're going to give you a contract, let's say a competitor for any of the platforms, we're going to give you this contract to come to our platform. Most of the time, and this is just coming from like ad tech experience, you want to just be able to beat the revenue model that the other one is saying, right? So like maybe it's YouTube coming in and saying you can make more money on ads, or Facebook saying like, well, we have more viewers, or whatever it is. So they'll like fluff it all up like that, and that is kind of what becomes a contract. Like I know like there's always like money and stuff being thrown around too, but I think that that's like very like much more like high level stuff that happens. I think in general, you're trying to get a commitment from the creator for exclusivity so that they cannot just jump ship again. And then possibly a clawback for if they do that, like how do you recoup the money? And then secondly, lastly, the monetization models.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you're brand new and you don't have any loyalty, and I'm guessing, do people stream on both Twitch, YouTube, Facebook? They're just doing everything and kind of seeing who has the better audience for me and say, okay, now I'm going to go that route there.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense in how it works, because I'm still learning this whole aspect there too, how all these platforms work, what reach they actually have. Some podcast websites, they can reach a couple million people, and YouTube reaches I don't even know how many millions of people because they're all on there. Yeah. And the good news is you have more people on there, but then you're also one person in a vast network of who knows what, with different types of content that are the hot button topics right now. This is what people want to hear about, but that's the stuff that's more beneficial, educational, but it's not going to get anywhere near the views because it's not what people are looking for.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing that's the same thing on Twitch. If you have somebody who's really good at a certain video game, or they're a really popular DJ, then that's where everybody wants to see them at. It's like, what can you bring to the table here? Or I feel like I'm getting exclusive content because I'm subscribed to you on Twitch platform, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
I really got to look into Twitch and more because I had no idea. I just thought it was a video game platform. Watch me play this video game all day and watch me beat the boss, watch me get that weapon, watch me do that. But it's so much more.
There was actually in July, because it was right before my art program, there was a whole program dedicated to podcasts done. So it was like about, I want to say it was about 15 different podcast creators, and like they would go on stream on like what was going on with their podcast. A lot of times it was like the live recording and then maybe like the production side of it. So yeah, I can also forward you some like podcast creators just so you can kind of see what they do.
I'm sure we'll talk offline about
that. For sure.
I'm always curious on that. Anything to help grow the channel, get this information out to people. Again, we're just having a good conversation. You'd be surprised how much you learn about somebody that you may never met, or you would never would have thought to ask a question, or you never would even know that even exists. So it's always fun to talk about things like that. And we didn't even get into all the other things that you're part of and all the other things that you do to balance your time, because you are also an avid dancer.
Yes.
I'm going to be excited to talk to you about that. And I also want to get a little bit more into some of the workings that we didn't talk about Twitch, but this has been a fun conversation. So here's what I think we're going to do. We're going to end this episode now.
Cool.
And I'm going to thank all my podcast listeners and all my YouTube watchers. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you like the content, please make sure you subscribe and you like the video, because what we're going to do is take this conversation to my Patreon page, talk more to Sebaztian about his dance passion and also other things that I think will be exciting to talk about. So if you would be interested in watching that, just go to patreon.com/realtalksontherocks, and you can get the link to my channel from the description, either in YouTube or on the various podcasting platforms that you listen to. And we can have a better conversation there. But Sebaztian, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. This is a fun, exciting conversation. I know we're going to have a lot more to talk about, and I can't wait for it. But to everybody else out there, thank you so much for watching and listening, and you have a great day. Take care.